evening, everybody, and welcome to Science Time. Let's get sciencey. Someday everybody's going to do that. Okay. Next month, August the 16th, Jon Seymour is going to be here. He is a retired geologist. He's also the president of the Kentucky Paleontological Society, and he will be discussing geology. I think that name sounds familiar. All right, tonight we have the fantastic Jon Seymour, and it's spelled M-O-U-R, not M-O-R-E. I am a very bad speller. Anyway, he has a PhD in biochemistry. He's on the board of Freedom Umbrella. He's on the board of the Indiana Land Protection Association and the Association of Indiana Land Trusts. He's also the president of the board of the Oxbow. He's here to talk to us about what is behind the wildlife vegetation of the land trust. Please welcome Jon Seymour. Yay!
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Land trusts. How many of you know exactly what a land trust is? Yeah, I could. There'll be more. Land trusts are areas that people have gotten together. Like say, you guys decided that there was a marsh over here on this side that you wanted to save. You could get together and form a land trust with the intent of saving that marsh. Now, in order to save it, you probably have to buy it, but that would cause you to raise money and you'd have to organize. And in order to do that, you would have to determine how you were going to raise money. You're probably going to ask people to give money, and you would have to form a 501c3 charitable organization so that people that gave you money could tax deduct it. It's not simple, but it's not hard either. And there are 1,700 land trusts in the United States. The largest is the Nature Conservancy, or TNC they call themselves now. They operate in all 50 states, some of the territories. Most land trusts are operating in 5-6 counties, typically around a metropolitan area where land is under threat. And somewhat time during the past 50 to 60 years, one group or another decided that marsh needed to be saved before somebody built it, and they formed a land trust. And then they decided, well, that lake over there, that needs to be saved too. We'll try to get that too. And they do this around the county, ending up with pieces of property all around the 5 or 6 counties. That's normal. We are not normal. We are a group that's trying to save a specific piece of property. So it's not scattered. We're trying to bring it all together in one spot to save it. So we're trying to preserve the mouth of the Great Miami River, which is right outside Lawrenceburg and constitutes the land between Lawrenceburg and Shawnee Lookout Park in Hamilton County. So 1,700 land trusts in the United States. They protect over 64 million acres of property, which is more than the Park Service protects. So it's a very significant conservation organization throughout the United States. Not the individual ones necessarily, but all together, it's a large movement. Oxbow, let's see here. Now we got to see if we can make this work right. So we're a member-owned Nature Conservancy, and our motto is the duck stops here, because we are primarily a migratory duck stop. And that's how we got started. People that were most concerned about having stopped for migratory ducks wanted to save this area and protect it. Back in 1985, a group proposed to build a barge port right in the middle of this floodplain that's the mouth of the Great Miami River. And a group got together and said, we don't want them to do that. So their thought was they'd form a letter writing organization. And they formed a letter writing organization, wrote letters to the legislature. 1985, they actually managed to get them to stop thinking about that. That wasn't enough, though, because they asked themselves the question, well, if we don't want to write all these letters again in 2 years, we better do something different. So they decided to form Oxbow Incorporated, and incorporated in 1986. By 1987, they were able to purchase 27 acres of land in the middle of this floodplain. Currently, we own 1,400 acres. We have another 230 acres under conservation easement. Conservation easements are the #1 way that land is being protected by these groups these days, by land trusts. Conservation easement is the same as any other kind of easement. The owner of the land sells to the person who wants to buy the conservation easement an agreement that says this land cannot be developed in any way and has these limits. You can't build a road on it, you can't dig a gravel pit, you cannot build houses. There'll be a bunch of restrictions placed on this land that are put on the deed under conservation easement, and then that is sold to the owner of the conservation easement or donated to them, the owner being the land trust. The tricky part is this is done in perpetuity, which is a funny word because it means forever, which means the land trust basically has taken on the contract to protect that land forever. That gets a little tricky. I can't tell you that I can't tell you anything's going to be here forever. But this is the way the law works, and we are going to do our darndest to protect it as long as we can. That means, for me, that means the organization has to be set up so it can work in perpetuity, and that's what I basically do most of my work with. So, let's see what's next on this list. Our mission statement is to protect and improve, not preserve, but improve the floodplain at the mouth of the Great Miami River. Why do we say preserve, improve, not preserve? It's darn hard to preserve something. The area around here didn't look like this 100 years ago. It's not preserved. If you said, let's preserve this, well, you're going to work darn hard for 150 years to preserve this just the way it looks now. Preserve, improve gives you an opportunity to adjust what you need to do. As we are dealing with climate change, the preservation of the plants that are currently out in this floodplain right now may not be possible. They might not have the right climate for their growth, for their germination. We don't know that. But if we can improve it, we have the opportunity to adjust as we need to make it the best we can for all the species that we can possibly accommodate. So this is what it looks like. Now, we get to try this here. So as we're looking at this, all this dark green around here is stuff that we own. This is Shawnee Lookout here, this blue. And then Shawnee Lookout has conservation easements that constitute all these farmlands in this area. And we have conservation easements that concentrate on these farmlands right here across the state line. So essentially we bump into each other. Our lands, conservation easements, and what we own bump into Shawnee Lookout. And the beauty of that is that I said we had about 1,600 acres that we're preserving. Shawnee Lookout has about 3,400 acres they're preserving. And that's 5,000 acres, or 7.8 square miles of space that are preserved and protected on the western side of Hamilton County and eastern Dearborn County. There's 5 houses on the thing. 2 of them are historical. The rest are maintenance buildings that are on Shawnee Lookout. Okay, so let's see here. This is I-275 that comes right down the middle of the property, so you've all driven through it. If you've driven down I-75 through Ohio, Indiana, gone across into Kentucky, you've driven down right down the middle of the property we own. This is the Ohio River here, and this wandering river is the Great Miami River. This is kind of an important thing. Rivers wander on flat land. They do what they call meander. Now, meanders are wonderful things because they essentially create an entire ecosystem. The area that we have over here, let's see what we got here. This is Oxbow Lake. This is what we're named after. And that is a cutoff meander from 1847. In 1847, that was part of the river. In 1847, a big flood cut a new channel over by Shawnee Lookout, 1.5 miles away, and that became a lake. In the United States, in English, they're called Oxbows, and they're all over. There's not too many on the Ohio. We're one of the few, but there's a lot on the Mississippi that you can still find. In Mexico, they would be called Riscaras. So if you go down to Texas and follow the Rio Grande, you'll find all sorts of refuges that are Riscaras. Same thing, Oxbows. Oh, and let's see, it's hard for me to just move this thing. This is the city of Lawrenceburg right here. Hot pink, hot pink. This is the Lawrenceburg Conservancy District. Lawrenceburg Conservancy District is owned by the Lawrenceburg Conservancy District, and the Lawrenceburg Conservancy District is responsible for the maintenance of the levees around Lawrenceburg. When the casino moved in, the Conservancy District became the owner of the mitigation property. Mitigation properties are legal payment by a developer for wiping out wetlands, and in this case, wiping out wetlands on the Ohio River for construction of the casino. The law says they have to pay back 3 acres for every 1 acre they destroy by creating 3 acres of wetland. That's where the Lawrenceburg Conservancy District took ownership of that recreated wetland. We were part of the negotiation. We got them to pay back 6 acres for every acre they destroyed. Okay, let's see what's next. Oh, I have to come here. So the conservation. So what are we conserving? If you're in a floodplain, what are you conserving? Oh, okay. I have to watch what I push here. So we have lakes and swamps. We have agricultural fields, and we lease out 490 acres of our 1,400 acres that we own as agricultural property. So there's essentially growing corn and soybean. That's what they plant. What does that do? It does several things. One is it's 490 acres. I do not worry about invasive plants. I know what the invasive plant is. It's corn or soybean. But it's not honeysuckle, it's not garlic mustard, it's not any of the other intrusive plants. So it's under control. And the interesting part is that if I need to, I can convert that back to some kind of wetland very easily compared to trying to do it from a grown over brushy area that's got invasive plants all over it. So it's kind of a means of helping control the land. Another thing that it does for us is it provides us income. We basically run the organization's daily effects from the lease money that we get for the 490 acres. Yes. About $82,000. That's about 2,000, not quite 2,000 an acre, or 200 an acre, I'm sorry. Not quite 200 an acre. So, and it's a floodplain. So not every little farm has the same value. The farms that are lower, and we're talking only a 10-foot variation here, but the farms that are lower have less lease value than the farms that are higher ground. And the reason, and we get around causing people a lot of problems with that by leasing the farms out for 5 years versus the normal 1. That way a farmer can look at it and say, well, I know I can get 3 good crops out of 5 years. So they can adjust and understand when they're bidding on the leases, they have that ability to not necessarily have to go year to year to year. They can work on a prolonged basis. Okay, so back to what that does. The other thing is these farmers can do 2 things. At the end of the year, once they've made their harvest, they can either leave part of that crop behind as food for overwintering wildlife, and there's a certain percentage that they are contracted to leave behind, or they can put the land into a cover crop, which has basically the same effects. Some of the cover crops are even better than if they left crop behind. So that's the third major thing that it does for us. There's a fourth thing, but I'll get into that in a minute here. Okay, so clover typically, that would be. Actually, they kill that. The roots, as they go into the ground, keep the soil loose, help aid the moisture level, keep the content there. We use no-till. All our farmers have to do no-till. That cuts down erosion. And it preps it for planting. All the stuff that's left behind becomes fertilizer for the next crop. They kill the clover into the ground, and that becomes fertilizer for the next crop. So they're getting pretty good with this. It's not perfect. There will always be runoff, but we're getting to the point where we can control most of the bad things that occurred with runoff previously. Other things that are out here, though, swamps, and we got woodlands, we have prairies. They're not natural, they're planted, but we can try to keep them as natural as possible with either fire or cutting. And these do create biocommunities. All these little biomes, tiny biomes, bump into each other. And those are edges. Those are considered edges, and the edges are where the animals live, feed, and breed. So this is what you want. As many edges. We don't have a great oak forest or anything like that. We have property that in 1937 was one big cornfield as far as you could see. There was nothing there. There were no trees. There was nothing. Just the corn. Now it's grown up, prairies, woodlands, and we bump into those edges, and that's where the biodiversity occurs. So this is looking at Oxbow Lake from the center of it. Looking to the north. This is a swampland, again with the trees growing in the water, some dying, some living. This is a prairie area after it was newly established. Many of the plants that we put into the prairie area, we bought the seed from the nursery at Miami Whitewater, the Shaker Trace Nursery. So it's all local seed grown within 60 miles of the area. We put the plants in there, but it's a prairie in a floodplain. Well, this doesn't really happen. It doesn't really happen. So we put the regular seed mix in for the upland prairie, and basically it comes down to, well, what works? Several of those plants work beautifully and live very nicely. Other plants just kind of disappeared. They could not take being flooded. All our property, when I talk to the gardening clubs, it's like, what would you do with your garden if it went underwater for 40 days out of the year? And by what I mean underwater, I don't mean that much. I mean 10 feet underwater. It's a different kind of gardening. It's a self-selecting gardening. Some plants do well, other plants do not. So this is kind of what it looks like. This is a 52-foot flood because the water's right up to the base of the levee here. I'm standing on the levee taking this photo. But about 52 feet. That means if you're down in one of the lower spots in the Oxbow area, your water's about 17, 18 feet above your head. And by 52 feet, I'm talking about what you get from the measurement on downtown Cincinnati. That's the nearest measurement. We have to go out and see what that means to us. Okay, so habitat preservation. You get the diversification that you need by preserving the different habitats. And the different habitats, as I mentioned, we've already talked about edges. So basically, by maintaining those edges, you try to maintain the stability of the population. And you can get some uncommon species because you have that type of stability. So, this pelican has called a meeting. And I don't think the double-crested cormorants on either side of it are quite in tune with why he wants to meet. We get some unusual species. And there's 292 plus species of birds that have been identified in this floodplain. That's more than most national wildlife refuges. Yeah. Double-crested cormorants. Cormorants. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. No. These are a diving bird. They're actually, I don't know genetically whether they're all that related to the pelican. They are a diving bird with a pouch, but basically they will dive. If you've seen the some of these things where they have show you the Japanese people that have trained cormorants to fish for them. There's a whole culture where they train the cormorant. They don't let them swallow. They have a band around their throat. So they go down and catch the fish, bring it back up, then go down and catch others. At the end of the day, they get to swallow the last fish, and they're fine. Right. Oh, well, I can see 30 or 40 of these in a few trees down there. More or less, yes. Yeah, right, right. Now, they didn't used to be here. This is relatively new within the last 20 years that they are spending time in this part of the country. Nor, before that, you'd find them up at Lake Erie, and they would do flybys through here. But now they're spending a lot of time in this area. And again, that's probably got something to do with climate change. We're not quite sure. So, and you also, because we're sitting there with all these edges and this kind of strange uh, place that has open space and little lakes, you get some species that you don't normally find. They look at that and say, that looks like home, and I'm lost, so hey, I'm going down there. This is an avocet. You don't normally find these unless you're west of the Mississippi River. But if they're lost, if they get blown off course in a storm, or this is a great place to looks like home. I have to come back here because I can't see there. Okay, so cormorants, right? Now what did I do? Try this button. Okay, so this is a pelagic cormorant, about half the size of the double-crested, and they're typically found Arizona, New Mexico, southern Texas. Again, they get lost. We look like a good place. So here are some numbers of interest, just the different kinds of things that we've done. We do surveys. We have kept a lot of records. We don't do surveys every year, but we do keep a continuing log of all the bird species seen. We are logging the butterfly species seen. We started that about 10 years ago. We have some other logs where we've got species of fish that have been logged in the area. So we continue to do this and build the knowledge of what species are being supported here. One of the things and why we have so many species of fish is because of the floods. Anything that you can find in the Ohio River, you can find in our lakes, because when the water goes out, some of them get trapped. So we have some species that are supposedly only found in the Ohio River, found in some of our little tiny lakes. And these guys were introduced back into Ohio about 30 years ago now, and have come back in with a vengeance. They work. We have volunteers that come out and do all sorts of things. So I can get volunteers out there on weekdays for a few hours and on weekends for a few hours. And we can do a lot of stuff. But if these guys want to do something, they are working 24/7, 365. I don't have volunteers enough to do that. They do little things like block up culverts so that water doesn't go down when it's supposed to go down. They do little things like mow through a tree stand like it was grass being mowed by a mower. And you've got a 75-foot wide tree stand that just disappears. Strange little beasts, but fun. Other things that are coming back in this area, like the eagles. We tried doing that early on when they came in and expanded with a vengeance. We tried to allow trap. Turns out you can't really trap in flooded areas. It's not safe for the beaver, not safe for the handlers. So we stopped, and what happened was after about 10 years, the population evened out. They cut enough of that timber so It really didn't support them to continue to go bigger. Population is evened out, and we're just kind of coexisting now. And we have figured out how to go out and we've changed some of the culverts so they can't be blocked so easily. And yeah, they've caused us a lot of problems, but we're learning to live with them. So, bald eagles. Now, there's a bald eagle nest on Winton Woods Lake this year, on Winton Lake, which hopefully some of you got the chance to see. They were setting up telescopes there on weekends so that people could see the eagles. They've come back. There's many, many nests. There's like 400 nests in the state of Ohio this year versus 4 about 30 years ago. So it's really been a great recovery. Now, the thing is, they don't look like bald eagles, many of them. It takes them 5 years to get the white head and the white tail. In the meantime, they look like these guys. So the one on the left is a brand new one. That's a first-year bird. Yeah. And the one on the right is a fourth-year bird. It's got the white head, mostly. There's dark flecks on the white head. And the tail is just beginning to look like it's going to go white, but it's not quite white yet. And then these guys came back too. These were introduced again in parts of Indiana and parts of Ohio and have spread down the Ohio River system and have done a real good job of populating. They are just fun. That's all they're about. They can eat all they need to eat for a day in 20 minutes. And the rest of the day is playtime. So that's what they do. They play. See, if you could make all the money you wanted to make in 20 minutes, think of what you could do the rest of the day. So this goes to your comment on. This is pretty typical. Great egrets, we have quite a few of them. They stay with us most of the year. Great blue herons stay with us all year long, right through the winter. Even when the lake freezes, they just move out to the Ohio River and they do that for a while and then come back in when the lake's on freeze. Great egrets, common. They're with us usually from April to, actually some of them stayed till December this year, which is unusual. Usually they're gone by the end of October. This is a hurricane. So that's soybean that they're standing in. And it's a fall hurricane that dropped a whole bunch of water up in West Virginia, flooded the Ohio River at the wrong time of the year when it's not supposed to flood, and as a result, our floodplain got flooded. So the talk was what's behind going on, because we talked a little bit about some of the mechanics of making a land trust and all that, but this is all great, but if you can't enjoy it, what's it's doing? What is it doing for you? We are not saving a pristine place. One of the best uses we can make of this area we're saving in this area where there's a whole big population is to acquaint people with nature. Let them see nature close at hand so that they can obtain the desire to help protect it here and elsewhere. So, why again? People need to contact nature. And we all kind of found that out in COVID. People, they need to have that experience of being in natural areas. You think different in natural areas. Things occur to you in natural areas. My main takeaway from going through the Oxbow every week is it's never the same. It's one of the beauties of nature. It's never the same. You encounter it, and it'll always be different. And caring, just caring. Who's going to protect it? basically only about 10% of the people in the country really care. It's not that much. They got a lot to do. That 10%'s got a big responsibility. And then if you're going to if you're going to try to make a difference, usually it's got to be done in the government, at the ballot box, in some way. Things are going to happen. You're going to need that kind of support. So having people in contact with nature, getting to appreciate it, ends up giving you the chance to get that kind of support where you need it. So how? So we do a lot of sponsored activities where we have direct contact. So we have cleanup days, invasive plant control, do a lot of guided tours. We do an educational presentations like this. We have river stewardship that we do. We do a birdathon, which brings in people from all over the area to check out how many birds are here during the second week of May. And we do research. We have research done on the property. So who does this with us? Some of the conservation organizations, Hamilton County Parks have helped us with planting. University of Cincinnati has done archaeological work on our property. It has 3 recognized archaeological sites on the property. Your friend next time about the geology of things. Well, the whole river valley is one huge geological mess, which he may talk about because it's a very interesting history, geological history. Friends of the Great Miami, we've done restoration work with them. Various colleges, we've done lots of classes. Miami University is just one of the universities. We just got done doing a research project with Purdue University Fort Wayne, where they were looking at bat populations. And Ivy Tech, Ivy Tech is the local, not the local. Ivy Tech is the statewide technical school for the state of Indiana. They have campuses all over the place, but they're all named Ivy Tech. Okay, so and done with the Kids Expo at Whitten Lake, Whitten Woods Lake here. Probably 4,000 to 5,000 people came to that expo. We had about 500 kids come to our booth alone, where we were talking to them about things that we'd found out there and picked up. We had skulls and beaver and deer and muskrat, things that they could look and see, and we could talk to them about the animals and how they related to the environment. So we do a lot of that. We have Great Outdoor Weekend, which is a group where all manner of groups in the area do special events. And then we've done several things where we just post that we're going to do something on Facebook, and people come out for it. And we've been selected as an outdoor gym for the Green Umbrella program. So this is what on a typical Great Outdoor Weekend, maybe 25, 30 people would come out. They've never been there. We take them on a walk and they get an appreciation for the plants as well as the animals available, as well as some of the history of how you create such a spot and protect it. And this is a photo from the Kids Outdoor Expo a few years back. Great diversity in this group because they bring people from the center city that are down in the schools down there. Some of them have never been anywhere. This is a class from Miami University, their master's program. In special operations. So if we want to maintain that prairie, we got to burn it. That actually is tricky. Very tricky. It's very hard to burn our prairies. Any reason why it might be hard to burn a prairie in a floodplain? No. You'd think that would be the answer, but that's not the answer. Huh? That's not the answer either. You can. It's a concern, but it's not why you can't burn them very easily. The reason is when you have a fire, you depend on the material that's laid on the ground to carry the fire from one plant to another. But when you have a floodplain, that material is floated up and disappears. So there's nothing left to carry the fire. We've tried to do it sometimes. You can stand in a circle, put a fire all around you, and you're fine. No kindling. And because of that, it's very difficult. So there's only certain years when we can hit it at just the right time. Well, it's dry, and the winds are right, and the right temperatures, and it hasn't flooded yet and washed all that stuff away. So there's only certain years that we can burn. But we do that. The rest of the time we have to mow it, which is much more expensive. We do a lot of road maintenance. That's 1,400 acres. There are probably like here's a burn. Here's a burn. So when we do, we have to do all the things that normally do for the burn. You have fire lanes and people ready to control the burn. It's a major project, and like I say, it was only a couple of times in a decade that we can actually pull it off. But it's much cheaper than trying to mow it, and much better, because what you're trying to do with a burn is prevent growth of woody plants and just stimulate grass plants. The way the burn does that is it kills the roots below the surface by the heat. Mowing doesn't do that. So when you mow, you've still got the tree roots and the brush roots down there. They just sprout back up again. But it's the best you can do if you can't burn. So this is a group that's collecting willows to plant further upstream. So we have a lot of willows that pop up because we got little lake edges. We can harvest them when they're young, and then we plant them upstream where the banks need further stabilization. So again, who comes out and takes advantage of this? Who sees what's there? And that is like Girl Scouts, K through 12 school groups, photography clubs, hiking groups, retirement communities. We even get volunteers from other organizations who come out to see what we're doing. Garden clubs. I didn't say that. I thought that would be obvious. So this is a Cincinnati Montessori school group. Came out to look at what we were doing. And again, this back to the farming operation. So there's 490 acres in farming. Oops, what happened here? Oh, I'm sorry. That's the next slide. Okay, so some of the things you can do out there are strange. So one of the things we did a few years back was the Lawrenceburg Police Department hosted a weekend of training of dogs for conducting searches. So you got 1,400 acres out there. You can develop a lot of different scenarios for what kind of searches you want to do. So that was really good for them. And we've had, as I said, 3 archaeological sites, 2 of which are being actively dug most of the time. And here's our farming. So again, soybean and corn. This is a corn harvester. They're big. They're big. But again, we work with the farmers. A lot of the farmers do some of the road work for us because they have a specialized equipment for doing that, which is nice. So we have some ins with them in terms of getting things done. And we're wide open. Did I mention we have no way of keeping people out of here? So we have got some gates on the roads now that really are pretty good at preventing people from driving through at the wrong time. We used to basically say, do not drive through when the road is underwater. Yeah. Well, that is not obvious to some people. So now we have some gates that try to make it more obvious that they shouldn't be doing or going on the roads. So we try to keep them closed when the roads are really wet, and we try to keep them open when the roads are dry and can be driven for the benefit of viewing the area. We also do employ the local sheriffs and the conservation officers. They come in, they do special run-throughs just to make sure everything's okay and check out people who are fishing or people who might be hunting. So the things, we have over 5,000 visitors a year now. We're pretty sure it's well over that, but we don't have a really good way of keeping count. And what do they do? I mean, we do have areas where you can fish, bird watching, which would be very typical, jogging, just jogging on the road, jogging on the top of the levee. You get a 3.4 mile circuit down our roads and back on the top of the levee. Hiking, very common. Bicycle riding, again, on the back roads. I see more and more people bicycle riding on the gravel roads because bikes are better nowadays. They got some specialized tires and bikes that are essentially designed for riding on gravel. We do not mark it. It's available, it's open, but we don't make. I'll pass these around. This'll help. And then do the same. So one of the things we have never done is develop what I would call knowing the carrying capacity of the land. Because of that, we don't advertise on the road. People that are members, they know they can do these things. People who talk to members know. People who have used the land before, lived around there, they know they can do this. But we don't make a big noise about it because we don't really know how much we can take without having to actually close it down and counting the people going in. We don't want to do that if we don't have to. Well, they're not, but again, if they go underwater, they don't work so good. Well, yeah, back by our parking area, it's up above the water most of the time. It's also exposed. we've had things disappear that we don't we don't want to have disappear. It's a bit of a small remnant of the Wild West in some areas. But it's gotten a whole lot better than it was 25 years ago. Yes. Oh yeah, yeah, right. Well, you would be able to locate the road and the levee. Yeah, yeah. And right now we've actually got a self-guided auto tour that you can pick up either from our website or there's a kiosk there that gives you the tour. And that'll have maps for you. Our website has maps of the road system as well as the area. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, like
Just you, you just couldn't wait, could you? Okay, so kayaking. We have lakes, and they can be kayaked. We just had a real nice one that it was a registered one because we wanted it to be small. It was going to be a moving lecture, more or less. So it was called Paddle Through the Past. And it was jointly sponsored by us and the Archaeological Research Institute, which has 6.5 acres within our property that constitutes about 75% of one of the archaeological sites. So they work from there, and so we did that, but we were able to add the geological past, the archaeological past, the natural past, as well as the Revolutionary and Civil War pasts that go with this area. This happens to be New Year's. The group of paddlers that always do a New Year paddle. Now their preference is to do it on the Ohio River somewhere, or on the Little Miami or the Great Miami. Floods. Doesn't always make those rivers paddleable. That's a good word, paddleable. So our place, when it floods, is a big backwater. So they take their kayaks and canoes, so that we're kind of the backup. If it's flooding, we're going to the Oxbow. So they take it out and do that. What they do here is they actually have a cooking canoe. Okay? They have a cooking canoe where they cook hot dogs in the canoe, and then they use paddles to pass the hot dogs around to the other canoes that are there. So somebody's towed this canoe with the cooker. Huh? I'm sure there is mustard. I'm sure there's mustard. But anyway, they do all sorts of inventive things. But yes, we are open for kayaking and canoeing. And I'm glad we got to that before she had to go. We also allow hunting. Not much. The hunting is in a very specific, kind of like the farthest corner of the property. It's also on the other side of the interstate bridge, so it's really isolated out there. You have to be a member to apply. It doesn't cost you anything, but you have to be a member. That way we know more about you and know where you live. And we limit the number of people who get these things. Now, this is not a place where you go for a weekend and hunt. This is a place where people come, oh, I got off at work at 3:30. I'd like to do a little hunting before nightfall. I'll go out here and hunt until nightfall and then back home again. So it's typically only that kind of hunting that's done there, and typically only deer. It is on the outskirts to prevent people from wandering into a hunting area that don't need to be there. You have to work to get out there. Now, one of the things that I do get asked a lot about is we are preserving land. We're a land conservation group. How do we manage all these things about getting people on the land? Most land conservation groups don't even permit people on their property. So we are very different in that way. So we're managing hunting. We're managing all the people coming down the road. We're managing fishing. We're managing all the tours. We're managing all the classes. This is different than most places do, and it's a lot of work. And usually when I'm asked to talk to land groups, that's what I'm asked to talk about. How the heck do you get that done? One of the things we do has been giving out grants. We had a donor provide us with a significant amount of money. We put that into the bank and said we're going to make kids grants from these K through 12 grants to teachers. So we've done several over the years and the wide variety of them. So this would be like one of them. Seven Hills started a biomeasurement thing. Each class, successive classes, would go and measure the same trees year after year after year, so they get to see how it progressed. And there were several other measurements they were taking on the biology. Oh, I can do that here, right? So we've had these are additional examples, building boardwalks around a school playscape, Audubon Valley Aviation Research Institute. We got them children's binoculars and bird books so they could take nature walks and teach the kids about birds, things like that. No, they would have this particular one had a rather steep slope, and they were using a boardwalk to get down the steep slope so they could go along the creek bed. Yeah, right. Community good. So we also have a situation where we've been able to develop a fund. We give $1,000 scholarships to kids from 5 different schools that school districts that surround the Oxbow area. So $1,000 college scholarships to each of those 5 students. They're also then eligible for another scholarship. Those 5 are entered into another scholarship round from a different fund that they have a chance for additional scholarship money. And this is just one of the winners. This is when we asked her to send in a picture of herself. This is the one she sent in. But yes, they're very interested in nature, and that's the ones that we are giving money to are kids that are going to study nature in college. So community involvement again. In order to be really recognized, you have to be part of the community. We want to be recognized as part of the community. We're giving money back to the community. That actually helped us a lot. A few years back, well, all this land, all the land we have, initially was zone manufacturing 3, the most difficult manufacturing you can have, the highest level. All manufacturing 3. Because of the floodplain. Back 100 years ago, nobody cared. Hey, it's manufacturing 3. That's the way it stayed. Some of it was never rezoned to agriculture even. Just because nobody asked. So a few years back, we went to the county and said, this is all the land we own, we'd like it all zoned agriculture. And they looked at us and said, oh, you're participating in community events, you're giving money back to the community, you've got these scholarships going, you've got these grants going, fine with us. And they gave us an automatic pass back to putting it all into agriculture. And basically, because we are a tourist attraction in some respects, people leave money behind when they eat in restaurants, gas. Community recognizes that. They know it. So we're part of that. We are the largest park in Dearborn County. We've also done things like Masterworks, where we actually converted our building, not the office space, but the lecture space, into an art show. And had a very nice, we've had 3 art shows so far there, which has been very nice. It's kind of fun. It brings in a different kind of member of the community. And so the program stops here. And I'll take questions. Yes. To Aurora? Yeah. Right. No, it's not part of Oxbow. We have been in discussion for almost 10 years now of how to connect the end of the Aurora Trail to the top of the levee that goes around the Oxbow, because it goes through casino property and they don't want to mess with it. Now, it looks like that's breaking down. The last set of discussions we had indicated that the casino may be able to turn a blind eye to the fact that their security concerns are no longer really a worry. We'll see. We're working on it. But basically, well, this is important. Getting it through there, kicking up to the top of the levee that goes up to exit 16 from the interstate, coming down Orbiting Road from Elizabethtown. There's plans to try to get another walkway, bikeway, through that area, which then connects up to the bikeway that the Hamilton County Park System wants to build from Miami Whitewater down to Shawnee, which would then link up to the cross-county bikeway that currently exists going across the north of Hamilton County to the Miami Bike Trail on the other side, which goes all the way to Columbus. And that can link up to the one that goes all the way to Washington, D.C. So, bike trails are infuriating because somebody with a 1-acre lot can sit and make it impossible for you to work it. But when they work, they're beautiful. A few years back, they completed the bike trail from Washington, D.C. to Pittsburgh. Prior to the completion of that, they logged 200,000 people on that bike trail prior to the completion each year. After it was completed, that jumped to 1 million people on that bike trail. So the longer the bike trail, the more people can imply, well, I want to get on here and get off here, and I can plan for that. The more you can do that, the better it is and the more usage it gets. And there's a big plan to bring the bike trail up from, down by Maysville, all the way to Louisville right now, along with the Ohio Riverway thing. Is she coming back?
Yes.
So the Ohio Riverway is trying to put through a water, bike, walking trail all the way to Louisville from, is it Portsmouth that's across from Maysville? So they're trying to do that, and that is a portion that then links up to this Aurora trail that tries to get through the Oxbow here. So we're trying to build our link of it, and there's many other people trying to build links of it. There's Wasson Way. I don't know whether you've seen that. That's been in the papers a lot. That's a link on the east side of Cincinnati that just got completed. That's part of that overall concept that runs the trail that length. So there's a lot of stuff to do. When we get these completed and people can bicycle and walk these areas, there's going to be a lot more, I think, healthy exercise and healthy travel walking, as well as a lot more closeness to nature. Yeah. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yes. I think our project with Thomas More was simply a classwork out in the Oxbow. I'm pretty sure it was just that. Yeah. I have taken one person around on a tour, and I have taken 100 people around on a tour, although I don't like to do 100 people by myself. 25 people to a leader is kind of like the max. No. No. And you get strung out real quick. So I typically, when I've done big ones like that, I'll have 3 or 4 leaders and place them about every 25 people. So at least everybody gets something as they're going along. There's no charge. We would accept any donations. And we like people to join up and help us continue that protection in perpetuity. Can't live there all year because they swim, but not that well, not that long. Interestingly, you have to think about it. Nothing can really live there all the time. So the beaver have to move. Their dens get flooded, and their den is where they're supposed to go and rest and breathe. And it's filled with water. They go somewhere else. Oh yeah. I would say it would probably be very remarkable. I've never done this. I've never heard anybody do it. But I would probably be very remarkable to walk along the edges of the rocky buildup of I-275 through that area to see what's hanging up there during a flood, because it's going to be a lot of stuff. Yes. Yeah. About 2 hours. 2 hours typically. Yeah. And typically we just use our road. Go down because it. Not too much. Not too much. It's if we're walking, it's flat. What we typically do is a car tour with about 6 stops and short walks, because that gives you the best coverage of the area. We have done school buses. That takes a little bit more planning because you dump 30 people off in one spot. And you don't want to do that too often. If I'm doing a car stop, if I'm doing a car tour, I might have 7 stops. If I'm doing a school bus, I might get it down to 3 or 4 at the most. Huh? We basically last year closed the gates in December and didn't open them up until late March, early April. In theory, there have been a few days you could drive, but not much. The thing is that it rains and everything gets wet and the road gets mushy and the road starts to dry and then floods. The sky's beautiful. Right? People think it's wonderful, but it's flooding. And the flood goes down and it's still wet and everybody thinks, and then it rains again. So it just stays wet into the Ohio. It comes from, is it Grand Lake, St. Mary's or something like that? Yeah, yeah. It's up near Toledo, but yeah. The Little Miami, the Great Miami drains about 1/9 of the state of Ohio, and the Whitewater River, which flows into the Great Miami right at the start of this floodplain, drains about 1/16 of the state of Indiana. So all that water comes through our property. When it hits the Ohio in flood, it does not mix. The speed of the water, the density of the water in the Ohio is different, and so all the water that backs up over us is Great Miami water and whitewater contribution to it. That's what floods. Interestingly enough, even the water in the lakes is of a different density and tends to stay together. So it backs up into a certain portion of the floodplain and then refills the lake when it comes back out. It's rather ridiculous, but that's how it works.
Any other questions? Okay, so everybody,
That's for
August
you.
16th, Dan Phelps is coming. He's a retired geologist, and he is the president of the Kentucky Paleontological Society. You also may have seen him in I Believe Dinosaurs. He will be discussing geologic time.
Which is not archaeology. That's a different group. It's not archaeology. Archaeology involves people and more recent things. That's way back. Paleontologists. Dinosaur types.
Anyway, hope to see you on August the 16th. We always start at 6. The talk starts at 6:30, so I hope to see you guys next time. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.